Hello everyone. When love is tested, when storms rise and everything we believe in begins to shake, will love survive? CEO Toan and I, we never asked for a love story filled with obstacles, but somehow fate chose us. And now, as challenges close in from every side, I ask myself, can two hearts, no matter how sincere, withstand the weight of the world? Or will we be torn apart by the very love we're trying to protect?
The rain had just stopped, but the air still carried the weight of a storm. In a quiet corner of the city, a young woman stood at the edge of a crowded market, her hands trembling as she held a bundle of wild vegetables. She had no name to most, only a shadow of a past filled with scars, betrayal, and silent tears. Yet in her heart, there remained a fragile hope, the memory of a man who once looked at her not with pity, but with deep, unwavering respect. That man, once lost in the forest, weak and forgotten, had become her turning point, a stranger who should have passed by, but stayed. A powerful CEO whose life she saved without asking anything in return. And from that moment, fate tied their lives together in the most unexpected way. He brought her back when she was close to collapsing. He gave her a name again when the world tried to erase her. But as their bond grew, so did the walls around them. Whispers of her past followed like ghosts. His family questioned her worth. Business partners doubted his judgment. And even she, in the dead of night, asked herself whether love could truly rewrite destiny. He never promised her comfort, only truth. She never asked for luxury, only peace. But when love is tested, truth and peace are the first to bleed. Days turned to weeks. She disappeared once more, afraid that her presence would ruin him. He searched endlessly, ignoring board meetings and angry investors. He returned to the forest, to the place where it all began, hoping to find traces of the girl who had changed his life. When they met again, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. In an abandoned shelter, under a sky full of forgotten stars, he found her, hungry, sick, yet still with eyes full of quiet strength. This time, he didn't ask. He carried her home. But challenges didn't end. His position as CEO was threatened. His mother, once neutral, now faced pressure from their circle. Rumors exploded across social media. The question on everyone's lips, would he give her up to save everything he built? And then came the moment of truth in front of reporters, board members, and his own family. He made his choice. I would rather lose titles than lose the one who gave me reason to fight. Gasps followed. Shock turned into silence. And in that silence, a fragile woman, once abandoned by everyone, finally smiled, not out of victory, but out of belonging. Because love, when tested, either breaks or becomes unbreakable. Their story was no longer about a CEO and a girl with a broken past. It was about two hearts that refused to give up, no matter how loud the world shouted. You don't belong together, and sometimes, that is the loudest kind of love there is. As the days passed, their love was no longer just a gentle light in the dark, it became a flickering flame. Struggling against the storm, rumors began to spread, whispers in the company. Raised eyebrows among the elite. Some accused her of clinging to him for status. Others mocked his judgment. But the harshest test came not from strangers, but from within his own family. His mother, the one who had always shielded him, now stood firmly against their relationship. She doesn't belong in our world, she said coldly, her eyes filled with disapproval. You're risking everything. He didn't answer immediately. That night, he sat alone in his office, staring out the window as rain tapped gently against the glass. He thought of her kindness in the forest, her silent pain when she tried to leave so he wouldn't be dragged down, and the way she smiled despite everything. He clenched his fists. The next morning, he made a decision. He gathered his board members, looked them in the eye, and said, "Judge me if you must, but I will not abandon someone who saved me, who stood by me when I was at my weakest. That is not weakness, that is honor." His words echoed through the room. Meanwhile, she stood outside the house she once stayed in, now just a memory. She had planned to leave again, to disappear so he wouldn't have to choose between love and duty. But as she turned to go, he appeared, drenched in rain, breathless, determined. "I choose you," he said, voice trembling. "Even if the world turns its back on us, even if I lose everything, your love is the one thing I can't afford to lose." She didn't say a word, just walked toward him slowly and cried into his chest, her walls finally breaking. Love had been tested and it chose to stay, but fate wasn't finished with them yet. The calm after the storm was short-lived. Just as their hearts began to rest in the warmth of each other's arms, another blow struck. A financial scandal rocked the company. An anonymous source accused him of forging documents to secure contracts, all pointing toward a timeline that aligned with when he had been recovering. When she was by his side, whispers turned into accusations. Investors pulled out. News headlines painted him as a reckless man blinded by love. She saw the headlines and her hands trembled. Deep down, she feared this, that her presence, her past, her connection to him would be used to break him. She stood in front of him that night, voice slow and aching. "This is because of me," she whispered. "Let me go. Let me disappear again. Maybe then they'll stop attacking you." But he stepped forward, eyes fierce. "No," he said. "Don't you dare blame yourself. This is the price of truth, and I'd pay it 100 times over if it means keeping you beside me." They launched an investigation. He refused to hide. He provided every file, every login, every signature. While his legal team worked tirelessly, she stood beside him not as a weakness, but as his strength. Every night, when he returned home exhausted, she waited for him, with quiet meals, with gentle words, with silence that spoke volumes. And then, one morning, the truth came out. The real culprit was the deputy director, jealous, threatened by the CEO's determination and loyalty, and hoping that tearing down his personal life would shake his leadership. The evidence was undeniable. The scandal passed, but the scars remained. He stood in front of the press, holding her hand tightly. Cameras flashed, and reporters shouted. But all he said was, "She saved my life not just once in the forest, but every day since. In a world full of masks and betrayal, her love was the only truth. I don't regret a single thing." The crowd went quiet. And somewhere, in the silence, trust began to grow again. Love had been tested not once, but many times, and each time, it had chosen to rise stronger. But would fate finally let them be happy, or did it have one more trial in store? Life lesson from the story: love, when true, does not fade in the face of difficulty, it deepens. The story of CEO Toan and Ly Tu Diem reminds us that real love is not built during moments of comfort, but in times of trial, pain, and uncertainty. When the world turned its back, when whispers became storms, and even when the person you love tries to walk away for your sake, true love holds on. Through scandal, misunderstanding, and fear, Both Toan and Diem showed courage. He refused to let go of the woman who saved his life and believed in her when the world doubted her. She, in turn, stood beside him not out of duty, but from a quiet strength only love can give. The greatest lesson here is that love, when tested, can either shatter or shine. But if both hearts are brave enough to fight together, to trust and to stay even when it's easier to leave, then love becomes something unbreakable. In a world where many give up at the first sign of trouble, this story teaches us to hold on, to believe, to choose love again and again, even when fate seems determined to tear it apart. Because in the end, love doesn't just survive the storm, it becomes the shelter within it. And in that shelter, something even more powerful is born: faith. Faith in each other. Faith that no matter how dark the path becomes, there will always be a hand reaching out in the shadows. Ly Tu Diem and CEO Toan didn't have a perfect love story. They had a tested one, and perhaps that is even more beautiful. We live in a world where promises are often broken, where people choose pride over vulnerability. But this story teaches us the value of humility, of saying I was wrong, of fighting for someone when it would be easier to walk away. Love is not proven through grand gestures, but in quiet persistence, in caring for someone when they're sick, in waiting, in protecting someone's dignity when they're most fragile. The most powerful message is this: true love is not a fairy tale. It is a battle fought with patience, trust, and unwavering devotion. And those who choose to love, even when it hurts, will discover a bond that no circumstance can destroy. So, when love is tested, don't fear. Let it be tested, because if it's real, it won't just survive, it will emerge stronger, deeper, and destined, just like theirs.